Why do you like to be productive? I found myself asking this question because, to be honest, in my own personal life, one of my core philosophies is that one of the most important questions anyone can ask themselves, or one of the most important questions you can ask about anything, to be honest, is why? Why? If you want to get in better shape, why do you want to get in better shape? If someone participates in certain activities, why does this person participate in certain activities? I feel like if you ask why, it helps you kind of get to the bottom of things and it helps you get to the root cause of things. And so the other day I was kind of curious and I was wondering, why do people want to be productive? And the reason why I was asking that question is because the more I understand about why people want to be productive, the more effective I am at helping them achieve that end result. So I kind of went on Reddit, and Reddit's kind of my place where I do surveys or where I kind of check in to see what people are thinking. And I just did a random post and pretty much said, why do you like to be productive? Like, give me your reasons why, give me what you want to accomplish, give me your goals and everything like that. Um, it was a combination of Reddit and it was a combination of my email newsletter. And I was actually a bit shocked because I figured that not too many people would actually answer this question. I got over 70 people that responded to my question. And some of the answers I saw actually were a bit shocking. I was genuinely like, I won't say confused, but they caught me off guard because they weren't what I expected. So I'm going to read a few of the responses. Some of them are pretty short and a little bit vague. Some of them are a lot longer and a little bit more descriptive, which I appreciate for people who really go into detail about what they believe or what they think. Or, when you're responding to a question, the more specific you are, the better. So to start with some of the more simple ones or some of the more vague ones, someone wrote Playful Review 262. Without some sense of purpose in my life, I feel depressed. Like, what even is the point of living? Here's another one. Productivity can be a good source of dopamine. A lot of people get a lot of satisfaction from the amount of work they achieve. That's from Hamadiko. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. If you end up watching this, my apologies for mispronouncing your name. One more kind of short one. Well, this is the purpose of life, I believe. And this is from Cam Rudden. And then some of the longer ones. I think I struggle with wanting to be productive because of this exact question. Why? To what end? I'm not broke, poor, maybe lower middle class. I'll never be rich. Maybe if I was hyper productive, I could break into middle class, but then I'll just die someday soon anyway. So I'm at peace and like having free time to garden and go on hikes and stuff. I wouldn't mind being more productive in my personal life for art or gardening or having the home in a more efficient order. I guess kind of being more organized at home. But productivity to a financial end is kind of a non-starter for inspiration personally. Almost view it as tied to the whole constant growth, burn the world forever, increasing profit society we're brought up in and supposed to identify with. One last one from Remote Waste. I like improving things. I like problem solving and I love seeing smart solutions others have come up with to similar problems. There's a beauty to it. So while there are definitely benefits to my life, I think ultimately I enjoy the game aspect it brings to areas of my life. I don't actually tend to think of it as a game, but it certainly seems similar. And I think that describes my constant curiosity around improvement in different areas. He put a lot of question marks. I don't know why there's so many question marks. They seem like statements, but that doesn't really matter too much. But these are some of some of the responses I got from people. Now, some of the responses are a bit confusing. Some of them are a bit more direct. Some are very vague, but what I kind of gathered, I kind of looked at all the different comments I got from Reddit, from my newsletter, for people that are subscribed to my newsletter. And this seemed to be the most common answers that I received. A lot of people said they wanted to be more productive in order to have a more fulfilling life. A lot of people said it was pride, life satisfaction came up a lot, dopamine came up a lot. And my interpretation of this is people kind of want to be productive to just feel good. It's almost like a chemical high that they get. You just feel like you've done something when you are productive. A lot of people put that they gain a sense of control by being productive. I saw quite a few people put that it gamifies life. And I saw a significant amount of people say that it kind of creates a sense of leveling up. So I thought that was interesting. These were pretty interesting answers that I got from people. Now, the reason why I'm creating this video is because I want to share some of my thoughts on how you can achieve what some of these people desire and what pitfalls you should avoid. And sort of the inspiration for making this is as I was kind of reading through the responses, I was kind of going back and forth with some people. Of course, not everyone I can go back and forth with. By the way, if you keep hearing a beep, my smoke detector has been just like weird today. And I tried to call the maintenance people in my apartment and they're just really slow. So that's the reason why it keeps beeping. My bad. I'm going to try to like edit around the beeps and not talk while it's beeping, but some of these I might miss. So bear with me here. But yeah, so that's why I wanted to create the video because I was kind of going back and forth with people, and some of the comments I was seeing were, how do I put it? I was kind of seeing quite a few comments where if people went down the route that they were claiming to be on, if they continued down the path that they were already on, I don't think it would be healthy, and I think it'd be detrimental to them. And then there were a few people that were, I think, on the right path. And this is just my personal perspective, my 2 cents. But again, I wanted to kind of give my insights on what you could do to achieve some of these outcomes, having a more fulfilling life, having more pride, having good life satisfaction, getting that good dopamine, having a better sense of control, all that stuff. But I also want to give you sort of my 2 cents on the dark side, so to speak, of productivity and what you don't want to do in pursuit of productivity. So before we kind of get into that, before we get into my responses and what I think you could do, why the hell should you even listen to me? That's always a question I try to answer in these videos. So by no means do I have a perfect life. I'm a human like everyone else, but I would like to say that I've accomplished at least a handful of noteworthy things in my life so far, in my very short life so far. I've been told by other people that they would consider me successful. I don't consider myself that successful. You know, you're always kind of comparing yourself to someone above you, but I wouldn't consider myself that successful. But I've been told by others that I'm pretty successful. So I'll go along with what they say. Just a few things about me to, give me a sense of credibility and to convince you that I'm not just some Joe Schmo on YouTube that's not worth listening to. I'm the former owner of College Conqueror. It was basically a website that helped high school students and college students succeed in college and beyond. I'm the co-founder of Affinity. Affinity was a marketing agency that me and a business partner had. It focused on using Facebook ads to help small gyms and personal trainers succeed. I published several books. One of the books is actually right here, kind of at the bottom right, or I guess the bottom right of these photos. It's called 27 by 27. Former pickup artist, happily married. I mentioned this because I know nowadays the dating game is a bit difficult for a lot of people. I know the statistics on divorce is high. It's not favorable for either party, for men or women. And the amount of single people who don't want to be single, is relatively high. So I mentioned this because right now I'm super happy with my marriage, but basically have no issues. And I, prior to that, was in a situation where I didn't feel like I was struggling with dating anyway. In a world where a lot of people are struggling with dating, that didn't impact me too much. So from that perspective, from that relationship pillar, as I call it, I was, in my personal viewpoint, winning. I used to read about 3 books a week. I'm the current owner of Productivity Accelerator. Productivity Accelerator helps young, busy professionals and entrepreneurs get more done in less time. I've navigated multiple industries, including real estate, law, and the medical industry. I am still a real estate consultant. I used to work at a law firm, and I do currently right now work as the head of business development for a medical laboratory. I am the former host of one of the top podcasts in Northern Virginia. I used to have a podcast called Meeting Virginia. It was one of the best podcasts in Northern Virginia. I kind of went on a hiatus. I might start up again in the future. I haven't decided yet because it's so time consuming, but it was one of the highest ranked podcasts in all of Northern Virginia. I'm the top productivity trainer in Northern Virginia, and I'm sought after as a guest for numerous podcasts. I've been on at least 12 podcasts and shows so far just this year. Actually, the top left photo up here is one of the live in-person podcasts that I did in Leesburg, which is in Northern Virginia for anyone watching, in the United States. So that's just a brief synopsis of just some of the things that I've accomplished so far in my life, just to give you a sense of credibility of who I am. So back to the content of this video. So I saw a lot of interesting responses to the question I posted, and some of the routes, some of the pathways people seem to be on would lead to a good outcome, and a lot would lead to a detrimental outcome. So I want to give my 2 cents on what you should be doing and what, in my opinion, you should avoid to have a more fulfilling and a more satisfactory life. So, as someone that's tutored students and helped them with productivity, and as someone that's gone through depression and managed to find ways to overcome it and thrive in life, I have my own unique perspectives on the pros and cons of productivity. This, in my opinion, is what you should be doing if you want to truly maximize being productive. What you should be doing is you should be building the pillars of eudaimonia using the 4x3 method. And I'm going to explain that method shortly. You should be playing the infinite game, and I'll explain that shortly. And you should be defining your ideal identity. That too, I'll talk about in just a moment. Now, we're going to start with the 4x3 method. I'm going to get into what you shouldn't do as well, but let's start with what you should be doing right now. And we're going to start with the 4x3 method. So, what is the 4x3 method? The 4x3 method is essentially just kind of a framework that I recommend people follow in order to increase the satisfaction of their life, in order to make sure that the progress that they're making is good progress. You're going in the correct direction. So what I recommend you do is spend 4 months working on one of the 3 pillars of eudaimonia. And if you're not familiar with eudaimonia, I've done tons of videos about this, written tons of blog articles about this, but pretty much eudaimonia is what is known as the fulfilled life. It's the flourishing life. It's the good life. It comes from Greek philosophy, and basically it's having as high quality of a life as possible by building up the pillars, is what I call them, of health, wealth, and relationships. If you can find yourself always building up your health, always getting in better shape, always, increasing your nutrition, always having a better diet, if you can find yourself always increasing your income, managing your expenses better, living below your means, making more money, building up your credit, building wealth, investing, if you can find yourself having better quality relationships, finding that ideal partner, going on dates more, if you're still single, having a better social circle, networking more efficiently, all of these things, when combined, is what leads to you kind of having a fulfilled life. So that is what's known as building the pillars of eudaimonia. And so what I recommend is spending 4 months on just one of these things. Now, which one of these things you should do will be super based on where you are in life. And that's something you have to kind of figure out for yourself. If you're someone, me personally, for most people, I'd recommend they start with health. And I say this just because if you start with health, it has sort of a trickle down effect. Unless you're already like super in great shape, most people could improve your health. Chances are you could improve your health. Statistically, you could be improving your health. Most people, at least in America, are overweight. I think about 60 or 70% of people in America are overweight. And out of those 60 or 70% of people, half of those people are obese. So most people are really out of shape. So you spending 4 months just trying to get in better shape will impact you significantly. And it's an area where it's easy for you to get ahead. Like I said, because so many people are out of shape, being at least somewhat in shape makes you stand out more in a positive way. Does that make sense? You get more reward for your efforts. It's like if you lived in an area where everyone had 6-pack abs and everyone was in super great shape, then, you having 6-pack abs and you being in super great shape doesn't mean that much. But when everyone's super fat or when everyone's overweight, you not even having a 6-pack abs, you just being thin is significant. It's super impactful. So this is what I recommend. And like I said, it has a trickle down effect because when you're in better shape, people perceive you much better. And when people perceive you much better, people are more likely to do things for you. People are more likely to kind of be on your side. Like, I'll give a quick story. I recently listened to a podcast called How to Take Over the World. And in the there's one of the podcast episodes is about Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I forget the creator of the podcast or the host of the podcast name, but he tells stories about when Arnold Schwarzenegger was kind of getting into bodybuilding and when people really saw him getting a better physique and they saw him like really actively trying to compete in his contests in Austria and really taking it seriously, people helped him out. People worked with him. He felt like he was almost a golden child, like luck was just on his side. And people would see him and say, his neighbors would say like, oh, if you're a bodybuilder, you probably need protein. So you probably need eggs. If you want some eggs, feel free to come by my, farm next door and come grab a few. I know bodybuilders, big guys like you need more protein. Take some. People were just helping him. People were doing what they could to treat him favorably. And I think part of this is because he had a lot of ambition, but I think another part of this is his physique. When you look better, people treat you better. Not to get on too much of a tangent, but if you get a chance, I've done other videos about this as well. I highly recommend looking up a concept called the halo effect. And pretty much what the halo effect is we as humans, we sort of treat people based on how they're perceived. So if you see someone that's handsome or attractive or well put together, you treat them better. You assume that they have higher quality attributes. You assume that someone who is wearing, say, for example, a nice suit, or a woman that's attractive, or male or female that's in great shape, you assume they have higher intelligence. You assume that they're nicer. You assume that they are higher status. These are assumptions. These things might all be false, but you assume these things to be true because as humans, in our minds, we assume if someone looks a certain way, then these other attributes, these other positive attributes, must also exist simultaneously. So that's sort of what the halo effect is. They've done lots of good studies on this. There's one in particular I saw years ago. I cannot find the video, but it's pretty much this big bodybuilder guy, and he gets out of a Lamborghini and he has like a fake baby, and he's going around asking people, could you give me some money? I just left home and I left my wallet and my baby needs some formula. Could you give me money to give my baby formula? And logically, most people should say no because obviously he's wealthy. He's this tall, in great shape, like bodybuilder dude coming out of like a Lamborghini or Ferrari with a suit. Clearly, he does not need your money, but people are more likely to give him money without really giving him much pushback because he was big, because he was handsome, because he got out of a car, because he looked rich. People are just more likely to do things for him. So this is the halo effect. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, this same experiment, they got a guy who was made to look homeless, made to look poor. He had a fake baby, but he's driving around sort of this like shopping cart. Kind of like when you see homeless people, they have all their belongings in like a shopping cart or like a big bag. He's wheeling around the shopping cart with all of his belongings as part of this experiment. And he's asking the same question. I have this baby, I need formula, I don't have any money because I'm homeless. Could you help me out? Now, logically, you would think people would pity this man because, he has a baby. You don't know his situation. Maybe he just got kicked out of his house. Maybe he did nothing wrong. But because he looked homeless, so many more people would say no. So many people would insult him, call him names, tell him to get a job. They weren't sympathetic to his situation. So again, this is why I think that starting with health, if you don't know where to begin, starting with health is probably the best place to start. Because it has that trickle down effect. And in every other category, in the wealth category, in the relationships category, it'll make you much better off. So this is my perspective on this. The 4x3 method, kind of pick one of these three pillars. If you don't know where to start with health and work on that pillar, just that pillar, for 4 months in a row. If you're starting with health, work on your health, get yourself a health related goal and work on that goal for 4 months straight. And then once you work on that goal for 4 months straight, what you're going to do is assess, did I achieve a lot in this area? Did I build this pillar enough? If the answer is no, continue working on that goal for another 4 months. If the answer is yes, work on a different pillar for 4 months. Does that make sense? Let's say, for example, your goal is to get in better shape, get a six pack. Let's say in 4 months you pulled it off and you got a six pack. Cool. Now that you have a six pack, you don't need to focus on that goal anymore because it's accomplished. Now focus on maybe building up your credit score, wealth pillar, or being more social, having a higher quality social circle, relationship pillar. Does that make sense? So that's the first thing I recommend, the 4x3 method. Now the second thing, play the infinite game. This is sort of a philosophy that I came up with a few years ago. And I came up with this philosophy because I would read stories about people like millionaires. And a lot of these millionaires that I'd see, millionaires or celebrities, pretty much anyone who just achieved what on the surface looks like a significant amount of success. A lot of times, what I'd see them do, and obviously I don't know these people in real life, but this is for me reading about them in books, watching interviews that they claim, these are interviews where they're saying like how their lives are. So I take their word for it. But from watching what they say, listening to what they say, and reading about these people, a lot of these people get so depressed. They become so happy. And it's hard to imagine someone who has so much money, so much fame, so much status being so unhappy. It's hard to think about that. And my belief is that the reason why these people feel this way is because they no longer have any significant goals. They don't have any significant goals because they're playing the finite game. And so the finite game is pretty much when you only have a certain amount of objectives, a certain amount of goals. And the problem with that is once you achieve those goals or once you achieve those objectives, or once you're at a point where maybe those objectives or goals are meaningless, maybe maybe you had say 10 goals and the last goal was to become a millionaire and you jumped from goal 2 to goal 10, you became a millionaire, and then all the goals in between, are more or less irrelevant because they were all tied to your finances. But since you jumped to the end, you can easily do these other goals. What do you do then? Life's shitty at that point, right? This is because you're playing a finite game. So what I recommend is play the infinite game. Have unlimited goals. Have so many goals that are so big and so large that you cannot achieve them all in a single lifetime. And that's okay. That's the point. Because having infinite goals is what keeps you fueled. It's what keeps you going. It's what makes sure that you always have sort of a direction you're going in. If you don't have any goals, if you don't have any ambitions, you lack direction. And when you lack direction, that is what leads to depression, in my personal opinion. So by always having goals, by always having objectives, you're always moving towards something. And I say this because in my own life, whenever in the past I used to feel depressed, or whenever in the past I used to feel lost in life, whenever I kind of reverse engineered what the reasoning was, it was because I lacked clear direction. I lacked clear objectives. I didn't really know why I was doing something. It's kind of like when you see people who just work for the sake of working or they just work for money, but then you ask them, why are you trying to make money? And they don't seem to know. It's depressing because you're really just going through the motions. You're ghosting through life, as I call it. You're not doing anything with any purpose. So then if you lack purpose, you're probably asking yourself, what is the purpose? Who knows? You don't seem to know. You got to find a reason why. The purpose isn't going to be given to you. You need to find the purpose for yourself. This is playing the infinite game, having unlimited purpose, having unlimited ambitions, having unlimited goals. Does that make sense? And I tend to find too, just as a side note, when people play the finite game, when they start to get into that point where they're kind of depressed or when they feel like they lack purpose in life, some people take the route of, let's say, unaliving themselves. I know this is getting a little bit dark, but this is the reality. Some people do that. And then some people take the more degenerate route. And the degenerate route, in my opinion, is when you kind of see these celebrities or athletes or, millionaires or whoever start to take a lot of drugs. They start to just do activities that destroy themselves from the inside out. I think they do this because they lack purpose. They lack any real direction in life. Because if you had direction in life, hopefully positive direction, you wouldn't want to do these things. Again, let's say, for example, one of your many infinite goals was to, I don't know, become one of the top snowboarders in the world. Is it reasonable? Not really, but it can still be a goal. There's no rule that says a goal needs to be reasonable. Elon Musk has a goal to go to Mars. Is it reasonable? Not really. Could he do it? Maybe. Who knows? It could be done. You'll never know until you try. But the goal is so big that there's always something to do to achieve it until you achieve it. Now, hopefully, Elon Musk has more goals outside of going to Mars because for all he knows, in the next 10 years, he could get to Mars. And then by that point, what do you do at that? Where do you go from there? Hopefully, another planet. Same with snowboarding. It's a difficult goal to achieve. You could be a 40-year-old guy watching this right now saying, how am I going to be a snowboarder? My hips don't even work very well. I know I'm talking bad about 40-year-olds. I'm almost there too. I know that a lot of 40-year-olds don't have like bad hips. You guys aren't that old. But hopefully you understand the point that I'm making. You might think that you have some kind of disability, or maybe you're making excuses for why you can't accomplish something. And that excuse might be very valid, but that's the point. If you have bad hips, get rid of the bad hips. Come up with a goal to fix the bad hips. And then from that point, Now you can focus on the goal of becoming a better snowboarder, but then have another goal besides that. Once you become the best snowboarder, if you become the best snowboarder, have more goals. Have infinite goals. Have infinite goals. You always want to have so many goals that you cannot possibly achieve them all in a single lifetime. But by having that many goals, you guarantee that you're always doing something. You always have direction. You always have purpose. Hopefully, this makes sense. Now, the final thing I believe you should do in order to be kind of with your productivity while being productive is define your ideal identity. I say this a lot in a lot of videos because I feel like identity is super underrated as a concept. Identity is the thing that governs your life. How you perceive yourself determines how you act. It determines how you behave. Just a quick side note, I'm making a video in the future and I haven't come up with an actual title yet, but it's going to be something along the lines of how criminals teach you to be rich. And the gist of it comes from back when I was in college, I was a criminology major. And in criminology, there's sort of this concept called labeling theory. And what labeling theory is, it's sort of this debate between whether it's healthy to put people who haven't been 100% proven to be criminals around criminals. So say, for example, you go to court and maybe the evidence determines that you should go to prison, but perhaps you didn't actually commit the crime. Some people do go to prison or jail without committing a crime. Sometimes the justice system is just flawed that way. The problem with that is, according to labeling theory, if you took an innocent person and put them around criminals, like actual criminals, the innocent person will start to believe that he or she is similar to those people. So his or her identity of themselves begins to change. And once their identity begins to change, they'll start to engage in criminal behaviors. But because they're engaging in criminal behaviors, what does that make them? A criminal. But yeah, so the issue is that eventually, if you take someone who's not a criminal and expose them to criminals, put them around criminals, and have them engage in semi-criminal behaviors, eventually they just become a criminal. And they become a criminal because they see themselves as a criminal. Like if you're doing criminal behaviors and you're around people, your subconscious kind of tells yourself, I must be a criminal. Therefore, you take someone who's originally innocent and turn them into someone who's actually a criminal, which of course creates an additional criminal on the streets. So that's sort of what labeling theory is. But at the core of it, it's identity. It's using someone's identity either in a detrimental way or to your advantage. So what I recommend people do is you need to create an identity for yourself that's ideal. And it needs to be an identity that achieves what you want to achieve. So quick story, I want to kind of give a quick example about this just so this all makes sense. Sort of back when I was in college, I used to always refer to myself as Leonard. And I kind of did this exercise where I would sit there and define who I perceive myself to be. And so I defined and perceived Leonard to be sort of nerdy, shy, passive, all these to me, negative traits. And so I figured, how do I not be Leonard? How do I be someone better than Leonard? So I stopped calling myself Leonard, first of all. And I think this is a big thing to do. Stop calling yourself by your old identity. Call yourself by a new identity. I called myself Lenny at this point. And then once I called myself Lenny, I listed out what traits I wanted Lenny to have. Lenny was a lot more outgoing. Lenny could speak on camera. Lenny was a lot more assertive. Lenny was bigger, stronger. I started listing these positive traits, or at least positive based on where I was in life. And eventually I started asking other people, call me Lenny. Because I think when it comes to identity, it's not enough for you to see yourself as someone. You need other people to validate that belief as well. You need other people to recognize you as the ideal version of yourself as well. So eventually I went from Leonard to Lenny. And to this day, I still call myself Lenny. But all the benefits that I wanted from being called Lenny, from being perceived as Lenny, I got. And I got those benefits because I changed my identity. I stopped being Leonard and I started being Lenny. And to this day, to be honest, I still do this. I started calling myself Levi. And in my mind, Levi has certain attributes that I want to achieve. Levi has certain attributes that I find admirable. So now I'm in the process currently of going from Lenny to Levi. And I've done videos on how you can kind of define your ideal identity and kind of make the shift in your life in a short a time frame as possible. If you click the link below, there's a link below that'll I kind of have like a short identity course. It's 100% free, but it's sort of a short identity course that kind of walks you through what I believe are the fastest steps that you can take to changing your identity in a positive way. But that's what I recommend. Again, because identity is the governor of your life, how you perceive yourself and how you identify will dictate and determine what you do in life. It determines your actions. And there's this good quote that I'm going to butcher because I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but pretty much it's you are the, what is that quote? I think it's by Aristotle, and it's something along the lines of you are what you repeatedly do. Therefore, success is a habit. Something along those lines. I might be butchering that quote. If anyone knows the exact quote, leave it in the comments below. But more or less, that is the case. You are what you repeatedly do. Therefore, success is a habit. How you perceive yourself and your identity ultimately determines what you do, and what you do, when done consecutively, leads to the results you want. So if you change your identity, you change the outcome of your life. Hopefully that all makes sense. Now, I want to talk really quick about what you shouldn't do. And this is going to be a short section, but the reason why I included this is because I saw a lot of people when I was kind of getting responses who simply pursued productivity for the dopamine or just to be doing something. And I don't think this is a healthy route to go down. A lot of people I saw pretty much were saying, I do things because it feels good. One, if you pursue productivity solely for the dopamine, it essentially is a drug. And I've said this to people in the past where I don't think people understand that anything technically could be a drug when taken to sort of a chemical extreme. Like, really, what is a drug? There are good drugs and there are bad drugs. Drugs are made to create a certain sensation in the human body. Does that make sense? If you have a headache, you take ibuprofen. And the purpose of ibuprofen is to get rid of the headache. It's to create a certain sensation in the human body. If you feel depressed, there are some medications that make you feel happy. What is that? It's a drug. It's made to create a type of sensation in the human body. Alcohol is a type of drug. What does alcohol do? When you consume it, it's a type of toxin that kind of makes you feel, for some people, happy, for some people more aggressive. But it's either way, it's designed to create a certain sensation in the human body. All drugs are simply just tools to create certain sensations in the human body. This is true of video games. This is true of sports. This is true of even exercise. Exercise, when taken to the extreme, can be a drug. It can be a positive drug or it can be a detrimental drug. Either way, it's still a drug. Now, when I see people, and I've been down this route myself, this is where I'm getting this perspective from. If you simply pursue productivity for the sake of the dopamine, one, you're probably not doing that much because not all productivity it's not going to create a dopamine boost right away. I'll give you an example. I had a roommate years ago, and she would kind of just put on her to-do list basic things like cleaning, homework, taking out the trash, just chores, just basic chores. Now, while it's good to do those things, while obviously it's good to clean, while obviously it's good to do your chores, while obviously it's good to do homework, it's not truly productive because it doesn't lead to anything. It doesn't lead to anything significant. It's just you doing the exact same activities over and over again and feeling like you've accomplished something. That's not real productivity. It's fake productivity. But because I've never asked her about this. This is just my belief. I believe by her crossing off items on her to-do list, she was getting a dopamine boost. She was feeling like she was accomplishing something. She was feeling like she was getting something done. When in reality, she wasn't getting much done at all. Nothing was being accomplished. No progress was being made. There was no direction she was actually pursuing. So, and I think the reality too is if you don't see progression, again, I think this is what leads to depression. Again, this is why I mentioned that you need to have sort of a long-term set of goals, infinite goals. You need progression in life in order to feel happy. That's, to me, that's the true happiness. That's what true productivity is. It's progression in life. So I mentioned these two things, not having concrete purpose and just pursuing productivity for the dopamine alone, just because I think it leads to a lifestyle of just aimless wandering, which is just ghosting. And I think that's a dangerous place to be where you're just ghosting. I think that's not a happy life. I think that can lead to a lot of misery. And I think that's kind of where people start to go down the route of doing drugs. I mentioned this earlier, but I kind of want to reiterate this point. I think it leads to a route where a lot of people start to do drugs, where they start to kind of engage in terrible activities, self-harming activities, detrimental activities to their mental and physical health. It all comes from just not having high quality goals. Because if you have high quality goals, then being productive is you doing the step-by-step process to achieve those goals and seeing results. That's the other part of being productive. It's seeing results. If one of your goals is to achieve a certain physique, and after 5 years, you have not come any closer to achieving that physique, then when it comes to your goal of being healthy, when it comes to your goal of getting that physique, you have not been productive for 5 years. If you have a goal of getting X amount of money, X increasing your income by X amount, and after 5 years, despite you doing activities, you have not come closer to achieving that goal, then you have not been productive for that amount of time. Does that make sense? I see a lot of people. I'll give an example in every category. I gave one in health. I gave one in wealth, relationships. Another big one I see all the time. I see people who say, I want to have the perfect partner. I want to have, a good husband or a good wife. Yet after 3, 4, 5 years, they're no closer than when they first began. And the reason why is because they're not doing the step-by-step process. They're not being productive. They're not doing the steps that lead to the results they want. This is a lack of productivity. In their mind, they may think, oh, well, I'm putting myself out there. I'm doing A, B, and C. But it's not correct, because if it were correct, you'd at least have some results. You'd at least be somewhat closer to where you want to be, but you're not, because you're not being productive. And this leads to aimless wandering. This leads to unhappiness. This leads to depression. This leads to all the negative outcomes in life. So I really want to reiterate that point, because I think it's super critical to understand, super important for you to kind of take in and not fall into that rabbit hole. And I bring this up just because a lot of people, when I was kind of going through the responses I was receiving and kind of seeing people's answers on Reddit, a lot of people would say that they were just being productive for the sake of being productive, which is pointless. It's wasteful. It's useless. It doesn't do anything for you. So stop doing that. So hopefully this video helped you. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to reach out. Feel free to click the link down below. You can contact me, reach out, ask me a question. And one last thing before you leave, if you're trying to achieve your goals this year, I highly recommend checking out my Productivity Accelerator Masterclass. It's a super short video. It's about 30 minutes. It'll walk you through my 3-step framework to guarantee that every day is successful. If you follow this step-by-step process, I can guarantee that every single day of your week, of your month, and of your year, if you apply these 3 steps, will be successful. It will take you closer to the goals that you have in your life. One more time, it's 100% free. So there's nothing to lose by you watching this video and following the step-by-step process. If you want to watch this video, there's a link down in the description below. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope to see you in the next one. Peace out.